How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 1.
Greetings, conversationalists. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across America. I am delighted to have you guys with me today. We got so much. Goodness gracious. The phone number, if you want to be on the show, 877-973-7425. As always, text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777. You can get the live stream, the show notes, the podcast, all that. Look, Kamala Harris is risking something. I want to get into the Trump campaign at the bottom of the hour, but for the Kamala Harris campaign, let me play this. You know my views, my partisanship. I've given Trump money. I'd like to see him elected. The Harris campaign is actually running a good campaign. She's ditching the Biden people. She's putting in the Obama people. And you and I may not like it, but she's playing it very safe. By putting her in a bubble, keeping her distant from the press, they know, they're not going to admit it publicly, but they know the press is on her side by and large. Kamala Harris knows that the press hates Donald Trump so much, she can get away with things Donald Trump could never get away with. She's risking the goodwill. She, by not doing any interviews whatsoever, even CNN is starting to say, when is she going to do interviews? But she's now done something that members of the press are furious about. First called out by Axios, which is a pretty liberal site these days. Axios is one of the very first media outlets to start talking about pregnant people instead of pregnant women and to use the phrase unhoused instead of homeless. Whenever progressives demand a word change, Axios is usually the first media outlet to bend the knee. That's how liberal they are. And yet they themselves are starting to call out Kamala Harris's manipulation of news headlines. They did a story just a little while ago on Fox News about this. Very interesting how she's manipulating news headlines. Now, of course, we know these news outlets like the Guardian and the like, they're liberal outlets, so of course they're for her to begin with. But they really, you got to understand this. Just understand this, please. Some of you are going to disagree with me on this, and you shouldn't, because I actually am right on this. A lot of these news outlets believe deep down that they are actually objective, even though they're not, even though they're biases, their worldview, their reporters, a lot of them, and some of the reporters, I'm talking about the institution, not the reporters. The reporters, of course, no, a lot of them, they're in the tank for Kamala Harris. The institution, however, believes it's being fair and objective. So when Kamala Harris is discovered to do what she's doing, she's burning bridges with the institutions whose reporters are protecting her. It's like Joe Biden. Institutionally, many of the press outlets thought they were being fair to Joe Biden, even though the reporters and the editorialists were covering for him. The institutions thought they were playing it straight. They weren't. You and I know they weren't. They've got so many biases, but they believed they were. The individual reporters, maybe not, but the institution, you got to separate the two. And when Joe Biden in that debate proved that Republicans have been right the whole time, there's something wrong with him. The institutional credibility of these organizations demanded a reaction. The reporters themselves, these institutions realized their own in-house reporters were the ones enabling Joe Biden, and it forced a response. And the response had to be, he's got to be forced out of the race. The change in tone, all of that happening over a 4-week period. Institutionally, they like their reputations. So when Kamala Harris does what she's just done, it risks the institutional. Forget the individual reporters. We all know they're in the tank. But these institutions really do believe in some way, even though I don't believe them, they really do believe in some way they're fair. So this is what she's done. This is Martha MacCallum talking on Fox News with Bill Hemmer.
Trick was, we'll make it like an ad, and we'll reframe the headline so that when you're searching, maybe you see the spot and you read the headline, but maybe you don't understand that it's actually sponsored by the campaign. Show it, guys. Here we go. So this involved what? They cited CNN, NPR, Reuters, Associated Press, The Guardian a lot. And you would see this as you were going through your internet search. And, well, that's cheating.
Wow, it is. This is really, and I should also point out that Google says that there was a glitch in their system that meant that some of the sort of barriers that they try to put in to make it clear what this is weren't working. Oops. I wonder if it was true for other campaigns as well. We don't know that yet, but they say they're looking into that. But just as an example, so this is a Guardian headline. VP Harris fights abortion bans. Harris defends reproductive freedom. Well, those things are true. That's a factual statement. That's something that she backs and supports. But then they have a description under the headline. So you know how there's a headline when you read a news story. Then there's an under headline that you read in the news story. But it says this: VP Harris is a champion for reproductive freedom and will stop Trump's abortion bans. So the second line in what looks like a news story is actually a campaign slogan, a campaign statement. And, we all look at so much information, take in so many things so quickly throughout the day, right? This is very subtle, very manipulative. And in a moment when you also have a stepped up threat from Iran trying to get their bots into all of this and influence people in ways that are very subtle and difficult to figure out, this is something that I think requires a lot of diligence on the part of people who are looking for this information.
And Google says it's just what? They got one by the goalie?
Yeah, Google says, well, there was a glitch. There's supposed to be more disclosure that this is an ad, a campaign ad, and they're going to work on it.
They're going to work on it. Okay. Notice, first of all, that all of these mistakes, all of these glitches always benefit the Democrats, always, never fails, benefits the Democrats. You never see any sort of tech mistake benefit the Republicans. So if it wasn't clear to you what's happening, Kamala Harris is taking a headline from The Guardian. It says Kamala Harris vows to fight Donald Trump on abortion. And they're running that as a advertisement with The Guardian's logo from the newspaper and the headline, but the subheading is being changed not to what the actual headline says, but Kamala Harris's own campaign rhetoric. So it looks like it's a real news article. If you're not paying attention, you don't see the sponsored by or the ad. You see the Guardian newspaper logo or the Reuters logo or the CNN logo, done it to a lot of news outlets. You see the actual headline and then the manipulated subtitle, and it looks like a news article. It's a scam. Now, here's the problem, again, for Kamala Harris is playing it very, very safe. But the arrogance is beginning to creep in large part because I know, and they know that the press corps is on her side. This gets back to yesterday in CBS News when Donald Trump claimed that he was wanted to get rid of taxes on tips. CBS News eviscerated him. When Kamala Harris last week did the same thing, they praised her bold strategy on no taxation of tips. This happens time and time again with the press. But the press still tells itself it's not in the tank for Harris. You know they are. I know they are. The Harris team knows they are. Individual reporters know they are. But collectively, they refuse to admit it publicly. So there has to be some pushback, which is why now on CNN you're starting to get these demands that she do interviews. And she's not doing interviews. There's no reason for her to do interviews. They're dismissing the idea of interviews. And what's so funny is that the Columbia Journalism Review, they've got this headline today. Yes, Kamala Harris should talk to the press more. But you know what? You're really not going to learn anything. It's not really that necessary. The reporters, they don't ask the good questions to learn things. So they're saying, oh, yeah, she should sit with the press, but also it's a waste of time, so why bother? Yes, that's the spin. Columbia Journalism Review, of course, in the tank. And now, of course, Axios is reporting that Kamala Harris wants to reposition herself, redefine herself, and put distance between herself and Joe Biden. And one of the things they intend to do is tell Americans how she would govern if she were in charge. Never mind, it's the Biden-Harris campaign. Now, the Financial Times, of course, has a poll out showing that Kamala Harris is more trusted than Donald Trump on the economy. I don't believe it. Nobody believes that poll. And even CNN's Kate Bolduan is calling out the polling here that, no, there's no way this is the case.
No, the new poll, I do want to ask you about the new polling out of the New York Times and the Siena College. It shows that there is momentum behind the Harris campaign right now. This poll also shows that voters in battlegrounds still rank the economy, abortion, immigration as top issues, and that Donald Trump still leads on the economy and immigration in these key states. Despite any data that has been put out there by Biden before Harris, and now it would be coming from Harris and this administration, at this point, can Kamala Harris say anything to make people feel differently about their economy? Because this is a big problem for the Harris campaign.
We don't even have to listen to the Democratic Circuit's response. The fact that Kate Baldwin there on CNN dismisses the Financial Times polling, goes to this New York Times Siena College polling that shows she's behind on the economy. No one believes that issue. In fact, Kamala Harris was the tie-breaking vote, as she had to be by virtue of the Senate. It was a 50-50 vote for the package that caused all the inflation, the COVID bailout package that caused all the inflation. She was the tie-breaking vote. The fact that Republicans are only just now bringing this up, however, is part of the problem. Republicans are behind in defining Harris. She's had a compliant press. The problem with the Harris campaign and their arrogance in manipulating these headlines is that the press can only go so far before they feel like their credibility is in jeopardy. Granted, they've gone further than you and me. I was actually talking to a reporter this morning who was a little concerned with my monologue yesterday, saying Republicans need to start treating the press as the enemy. I think they do. But there are some good reporters and there are some good press outlets, and we should be able to discern between them, and many people don't want to. At the same time, they've been covering for her. She's been using that cover to help her. The media headlines on Donald Trump's sit down with Elon Musk. I think one of the reasons they were so angry about his 2-hour conversation with Musk is because he's willing to do that with them. He's not willing to do that with the media. He's willing to do it with Musk. But Kamala Harris isn't willing to do it with anyone. They're beginning to realize they can be bypassed. They're beginning to realize they're less relevant. And the media demands relevancy. So when Kamala Harris refuses to do a sit-down interview with them, and then Kamala Harris takes their headlines and manipulates them and turns them into ads complete with the news organization logos, that level of arrogance gets the press to turn on her. Now, they don't want Trump, and she knows it, but she can only push them so far before they are forced institutionally to push back. She's playing a dangerous game. It's a game that Joe Biden played very well until the moment he got on a stage, and all of us were told not to believe our lying eyes when we saw his condition. It was game over at that point. Kamala Harris, let's not kid ourselves. She's not going to get to game over with the press, but she's increasingly turning the press into hostile operators against her if she doesn't start sitting down. And here's the funny thing. It's another reason why the Republicans should rough the refs and treat them like the enemy, because it's going to force them to actually call out Kamala Harris even more than they want to, as Republicans are aggressively pointing out how easy they're going on them. We Republicans have got to rough the refs in this. You got to go after the media. You got to go after the press. And Kamala Harris is actually making it very, very easy for the press to start asking her tough questions as she alienates them with these headline thefts. Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the nation. My phone number, if you want to call in and be a part of the program, 877-973-7425. Always happy to have you guys. We have some good news. We actually do have good news. We should take it as good news. Inflation is down again. Now, it's not fantastic. Remember, the Fed wants an inflation rate at 2%, but for the first time in a while, it actually has gone down below 3% to 2.9%, the consumer price index. This is the one the Fed really pays attention to. Now, core inflation, which excludes food and energy prices, was 3.2%. Which is higher than the Fed tends to like, but headed in the right direction and another decline. Now, these can be revised, and oftentimes you get these revisions. At the same time, the inflation tends to be headed down, and the reason inflation tends to be headed down is because we're headed towards an economic slowdown, and Wall Street is actually more and more worried about the jobs market. In fact, you would think with this great news today, we would have a roaring stock market. Actually, the Dow's up 152, NASDAQ's down 45. The S&P's only up 6 right now as I'm talking. Why? Because they're starting to look at the jobs data thinking, we're headed towards a recession, aren't we? Probably so. The Fed could cut rates probably will cut rates next month. Most of the major market indices and financial companies out there are saying that this is already so contemplated in the stock market that it's coming. The only thing that could shock the market is if it doesn't come. And while the stock market will probably go up when it happens, that people will take gains out of the market in large part because people are, starting to think with an economic slowdown, we may have job losses coming soon. The number of people available for hourly work has started to skyrocket, and that's usually an early indicator we're headed towards a recession. So we got good news. Inflation coming down probably means interest rates are coming down, but it's coupled with the bad news that it looks like we're headed towards a recession. All of this coming before a presidential election. If the recession really does come to fruition, and I think we're kind of in one right now, even though the economic indicators that they use to say we're in one haven't trended that way. And by the way, I know some of you think these can be manipulated, but again, in this country, we have private data to offset the public data, and the private data and the public data together are suggesting we're headed in that direction. We're not there yet, but all the indications are we are headed in that direction. So stay tuned for more as the economy continues to slow down. Now, all that means as well that you should be considering supporting a group like Hillsdale College. Why? Because, as the economy turns, so too does giving. And Hillsdale is building this momentous curriculum around the country, K through 12, private, public, homeschool, charter school. It's classical education model. My kids are in a classical education model program. It's a tax-deductible donation at ericforhillsdale.com. In addition, you can get Imprimus. If you've never gotten Imprimus before, it's completely free. It's one of the educational benefits of Hillsdale College. Imprimus is show prep for my mind. It actually makes me think about the big ideas that I can weave then into the show. If you read Imprimus, you may hear me regurgitating ideas I've read in Imprimus, and you get it completely free. All you do is go to ericforhillsdale.com. Sign up. You can get Imprimus for free. You can also make a tax-deductible donation to advance their mission of providing classical education across America, K through 12, and don't forget their brilliant college. ericforhillsdale.com. Welcome back. It's Eric Erickson here across the United States. The phone number is 877-973-7425. If you want to be on the program, I am very happy to have you. Donald Trump headed to North Carolina, which is a great thing. So listen, I want to say I'm very, very flattered by the number of you who, when we put up the clips on Instagram or YouTube, or you hear the monologues, you email and say, why can't you advise the Trump campaign? Why can't you be his campaign manager? One, he doesn't particularly care for me. Feeling's kind of mutual. When I say that, by the way, there you go again, saying something to discourage. No, I've given the man a lot of money. I want him to win, but I feel like I should be honest with you guys and tell you what I actually think instead of what you want to hear. I am always happy. I maintain good relationships with him, even as he's not my cup of tea or me his. We still have a cordial relationship, as I do with his campaign team. There are rumors they may be getting bounced. I have a hard time believing he's going to get rid of Lastavate and Wiles. They've gotten him this far. And the issue isn't them, it's him. And that's the problem here. And I don't mean this disparagingly. I mean this is true, and you all know it's true, that Donald Trump can be his own worst enemy, and he's got to get his head in the game. At some point, someone does need to have the hard talk with him that you are losing this thing right now, and you very likely can pull this off. You can win. You may not win the popular vote now, but you can win the Electoral College, and that's all that matters in this country, winning the Electoral College. You got to get your head in the game. You got to focus. He's attempting to do that in North Carolina. He's going to renew a message on the economy. This is the headline from ABC News. Trump to deliver remarks on economy as he returns to the campaign trail in North Carolina. The election's coming up, and people want to hear about the economy, Trump said to Elon Musk. The economy's been one of Trump's campaign's central issues this cycle. The former president often spending a considerable amount of time discussing inflation, gas prices, and the job market. Yes, he does. Now, that being said, I got to play you this audio. This is from Philadelphia. This is a black voter from Philadelphia, and you got to listen to her in this conversation. It is a conversation on NBC.
How hard has inflation hit you?
It hit me hard. It's hitting me hard.
Who do you blame for it?
I blame the federal government at this point. If a working class mom who works as a paralegal cannot buy a $2 bell pepper because it's now $5, imagine a mother living on food stamps. Imagine a mother who's making minimum wage trying to feed children. They're killing us without killing us. If you understand that. They're killing us without telling us they're killing us. They're hurting people in ways that they can't help themselves. It's either feed my child or how about feed my children and I don't, but I have to go work.
Let me tell you a story. I know those of you listening on WSB in Atlanta, you've heard the story before. Maybe some of you have elsewhere because I've told it before, but I've got way more stations now than I used to, many more people listening, and told the story on stage at the gathering. When I had moved into the evenings on WSB, when I was just doing a local show and filling in for Rush back in the day, Nathan Deal, who was the governor of Georgia, wanted to do charter schools in the states. The state Supreme Court struck down the legislation, ruled it unconstitutional under the Constitution, and so Deal had a supermajority of Republicans in the legislature at the time, and he decided to amend the Constitution in the state of Georgia so that you could do a state charter school. Essentially, what the Supreme Court had ruled was that the state had delegated the education power to the counties, and so the state couldn't approve charter schools. The counties had to, and of course, the county-run, failing government schools didn't want competition from charter schools, so they were killing all the charter schools. So Governor Deal decided to advance legislation for statewide charter schools. The NAACP, the black leaders in the state, and most of the black churches in the state opposed it because the Democrats opposed it. They opposed it even though the families in the black community wanted it. And Republicans turned out to get the measure passed for the Constitution, and black mothers overwhelmingly came out in support of it. Black moms did. I had one of those black mothers call me. She was furious at the time because the state had adopted Common Core. If you're not familiar with Common Core was one of those things where all the tried and true ways of teaching were out the window, and corporate America decided they knew better. And essentially what Common Core was going to do was it was going to reteach math and reading in different ways and turn your child into a thoughtless automaton for the Fortune 500. Common Core is a terrible idea. One of the ways that Common Core worked was it wanted to teach you multiple ways to do math. And one of the most bizarre problems, and I speak from my own life with my own child, we went through this before we transferred to a school that does real math. Our church's school at the time, private Christian school, was using Common Core. Still does to this day. And what the Common Core math approach did was for example, if you had a subtraction problem, that subtraction problem took you an entire page, like 135 minus 100. 135 minus 100. The answer, you can do this math in my head, is 35. but you had to do an entire page because you had to learn to subtract by adding. It was the most convoluted thing. And parents could no longer help their kids with homework. My wife has a degree in computer programming and couldn't help our daughter. My father-in-law has a degree from Georgia Tech. He's an engineer, and he couldn't do the Common Core math. Common Core math is so bad that it even made it into The Incredibles 2, the movie from Pixar, where Mr. Incredible is yelling about helping his kid with math homework. And math is math. How do you change math? That's how bad Common Core is. It's even ridiculed within movies for kids and families. That's how bad it is. And many schools are still using Common Core math, and the teachers who use it will defend it to the hilt, and it's crap. It is garbage. It's not useful. My kids now are in a school that uses classical math the way you and I grew up, and they run head and shoulders around the other kids who use Common Core math. Not only that, when my daughter's done summer programs at Georgia Tech with other kids, she's the one who has to carry the ball in the math classes because the Common Core kids don't know what the hell they're doing. And yet they say it's a genius program. It's a complete tangent because I hate it so much that it gets me distracted. Thank God my kids were spared from it. But I had a mother call my show who supported Governor Deal. She was a black mother who worked 2 jobs. Her mother would come get the kids in the morning and get them to school because she worked all day. But she didn't have a husband at home. She had multiple children. The husband had walked away from them, gone. She had no idea where he was. So she and her mother took care of her kids. And she worked on, and I said too, she worked 3 jobs. She worked 2 part-time jobs. She rotated between the 2 on days. And then she worked a full-time job. So she had a 5-day-a-week full-time job, and then she had 2 part-time jobs she did at night on rotating days, working 6 days a week. She's only off on Sunday. And she called the school because the one thing she was committed to do is she would come home from her work at 5 o'clock, and she would spend time with the kids doing homework from 5 o'clock until 7 or 8 o'clock. And the oldest kid would help get the younger kids to bed, and she would go back to work. And she worked from like 9 p.m. to like 1 o'clock in the morning. That's how much this lady worked to keep her family together. Her day job was in an accounting firm. Her night job was in janitorial services. And she couldn't help her kids with math. She couldn't help her kids with math because they changed the comment. She was an accountant by training. She worked for an accounting firm, and she couldn't do the math with her kids. And she called the school to complain and vent about it. And the schools, you know what the school's answer was? You can come in at night and we'll train you on Common Core so you can teach your kids. And she was crying to me, sobbing on my radio program, that how could she do this because the only time she had at night was time devoted to her kids before she had to go do a part-time job she did not want to do and should not have to do, but her husband walked out. To this day, it just crushes me to think about that lady. And now you've got this lady in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia. She says they're killing them with the economy. They're killing them with inflation. You know who cast the deciding vote in the Senate for the package that sparked inflation? Kamala Harris. There are these stories to tell. And again, I would tell anyone who would listen to me from the Trump campaign, and I know they listen. Y'all, when you tell me you should be the campaign, they're hearing me. They're listening. Donald Trump has these stories to tell. Here's the thing. And again, it tends to be older females who write me angrily. It's not the men, it's the women who write me angrily when I say all of the polling has consistently shown a majority of Americans don't care for Donald Trump. They don't particularly like him. But they love their neighbor. There are these stories out there. This lady in Philadelphia. Tell her story, Donald Trump. Don't make it about you. Make it about them. And you see, Trump can do this. For all the people, myself included, say, oh, Donald Trump can't exercise discipline. He's not going to be able to pivot. He's not going to be able to say his own message. That's absolutely true. But in 2016, one of the things he did is he told these stories of these other people. Tell Laken Riley's story. Tell Laken Riley's story. Tell this story from Bill Malugin.
Sources tell me they were furious when local authorities in Massachusetts, a sanctuary state, ignored their detainer request and released an alleged Haitian child rapist on just a $500 bond back in June. ICE has been looking for him ever since, and yesterday they got him. Take a look. Boston-based ICE deportation officers arrested 26-year-old Haitian national Corey Alvarez yesterday morning in Brockton. That's about 30 minutes south of Boston. He is now in federal custody. As Fox has reported, Alvarez was charged with aggravated child rape earlier this year after prosecutors say he raped a 15-year-old girl inside of a migrant hotel in Rockland, Massachusetts back in March.
Tell that story, Donald Trump. Tell the story of the moms who are working multiple jobs to make ends meet because the economy that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden imposed on us sucks. Tell the story of the dead who were killed by migrants. Stop telling your story, tell their story. I don't mean it insulting, and I got to stop apologizing to you guys for upsetting you when I say it, but it is just true. A majority of Americans don't particularly care for Donald Trump. He lost the popular vote in 2016. Whether you think it was stolen or not, most people didn't vote for him in 2020. In my state, 30,000 people refused to vote on the presidential line. They showed up to vote for everything else. But it doesn't matter. If the Trump campaign isn't going to define Kamala Harris, define the election by the stories of these other people. And Donald Trump is really capable of doing that. He's done it before. He did it in 2016. He can tell the stories of these people. He can tell the stories of the mothers who were fallen behind because of the economy. He can tell the stories of the victims of illegal immigrant crime. In fact, Donald Trump is actually starting to pick this up. And I wish that he would actually amplify this.
Yeah, we have people coming into our country from all over the world, not just from South America. Everyone thinks South America. It's really from all over the world. They're coming from Africa, from the Middle East, from Asia. We're being attacked. It's a new form of crime in the U.S. It's called migrant crime. And it's caused because of Harris.
Migrant crime. You're right. Tell these stories. Tell these stories. You'll win the election. You'll turn the tide. People want their story told. They feel like no one's listening to them. Donald Trump loves his base. They have a connection to him. They're not Republicans. They're Trump supporters. He has a connection with them. He has a connection to these people. Tell their stories. Meet these people. Put Donald Trump in a room with these people. Stop putting him in rooms with the 50,000 people in a stadium. Put him in the room with the mom who's working 5 jobs and let him go tell people about her story. Put him in the room with the victims of crime. That's the way to make Donald Trump elected, is for him to not tell Trump's story and the stolen election, but to tell the story of the people he's fighting for. Kamala Harris lacks that level of empathy. That'll put him head and shoulders above her. Now, I got to move on, but before I do, one of the groups out there that's collecting these stories and talking to these people is Americans for Prosperity. They train you to be an effective conservative activist and advocate. They're a do tank, not a think tank. They do the business of the conservative movement, and they do it at the local level. So you can sign up with a chapter for Americans for Prosperity in your state at americansforprosperity.org. They've got chapters in almost every state. They'll teach you how to be a door knocker if you're comfortable with it. They'll teach you how to go to your local board of elections, board of education, county commission, city council, and advocate for conservative ideas. They'll teach you how to go to your state legislature. And if you don't want to do that, they'll give you all the information. So among your friends, you're the smartest person. You know the issues, you know the facts, and you can give them data so your friends can rely on you. So you can be an effective advocate, or you can be the most knowledgeable person in the room, thanks to Americans for Prosperity. AmericansForProsperity.org. AmericansForProsperity.org. Go sign up with AFP today. You'll be an effective advocate for free markets and free people, for school choice, for families, for small businesses. They are the largest leading grassroots organization in the country. They'd love to have you on their team. They have chapters in almost every state. AmericansForProsperity.org. Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the nation. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Really happy to have you with me. We are going to this usually in the afternoons. If you subscribe to the show notes, in addition to getting like what the show notes are, is you get a morning email from me, whether you're a paid or unpaid subscriber. If you're a paid subscriber, and if you text data to 33777, you get a big discount on the subscription fee. What happens is at noon, I send you my stack of stuff. So everything that I'm going to talk about on the radio and all the stuff I don't have time to get to in the day comes to those of you who are paid subscribers. So I really believe I shouldn't tell you what to think. I should say, this is what I'm looking at today. Here's how I'm developing my show. Here are all the articles. You can interpret it for yourself. You don't need me to. Or 9 times out of 10, we get somebody say, hey, can I get a link to what he was talking about on the radio? Well, if you're a subscriber, you get the link. In the afternoons, we tend to take one of the monologues that we've videoed and we send it out to the subscribers. We put it on YouTube. We're not doing that today. Instead, this afternoon, about an hour or two, Philip is going to send everybody who is a show notes subscriber a link to all the videos from the gathering so you can watch the conversations yourself. We're putting them in the podcast, rolling them out. But we also want you to be able to have the videos. This morning's video that I pushed out is the China conversation. It has, let me read you some of the comments. And again, if you text data to 33777, that very first link, you can click through. Everybody can see this video on China. The headline is China's already invading us. This is, let me just read you. When we were listening to their discussion, you could hear a pin drop. It was stunning. Thank you for sharing. As a crisis manager for my country, this takes risk mitigation to a whole new level. This is frightening. Fascinating info. Really appreciate you inviting these guests and sharing the discussion, Eric. Made me realize how many Chinese people living in America are not outwardly friendly. Perhaps they fear being spied upon or they're spies themselves. Holy cow, how frightening. Those gentlemen need to sit down at a governor's conference today with every single one of them in attendance. The panel discussion was bone-chilling. We're not preppers or anything, but we'll stock up on essentials after hearing this conversation. That's how impactful this discussion was. We're going to be pushing out all of the discussions from Mike Pence to Brian Kemp to Chip Roy to Chris Carr to Mitch McConnell. We're going to push them all out this afternoon. If you text the word data, DATA, just text that word to 33777. You can sign up for the daily email. You'll get these conversations. You can watch them at your own pace, pick the ones you want to hear, but you really should text data to 33777 and get this, hear this conversation. It's 45 minutes. I could have talked to those guys for another hour about what's happening in this country. The Chinese are already invading us. They are already invading. And some states, including my state, Georgia, thankfully, have begun doing stress tests on their water systems and their power grids, that if China invades Taiwan and wants to make us go blind, what would they do? And states are stress testing their infrastructure. Some are realizing that they're actually going to be good and keep the lights on, and others are going to have problems. Listen to that conversation. When we come back, we got to switch gears, though. We got more to talk about, including if you're in Jacksonville and WOKV, you need to stick around for this conversation. Those of you in Kansas City as well.